some people. I'm a vegetarian too right now,
Yeah.
right? So I'm
Me
coming
too.
from a place that I'm.
But I had meat today.
You had me today. Well, vegetarian depends on the day. The
Yeah.
vegetarian. I always used to wonder, like, I knew some people just in the family, like extended family, who were vegetarians. And I'm like, man, they're horrible to other people sometimes. And then I moved here. I had friends who ate meat, and they were some of the kindest people I knew.
Yeah.
And I think I drew a safe assumption from that is you eat meat or not has no direct correlation to how nice you are to someone or not. As an independent thing.
Yeah.
So I had to change that thought a little bit. So I'm not putting an emphasis of being nice in general on someone being a vegetarian anymore, because who are you nice to, animals or human beings? I feel like human beings should be top priority. You should be nice to human beings, you know?
Yeah.
And animals after that. But if you don't kill an animal, but you're a terrible person to people around you, then I don't think you really embody the philosophy again. If that's where you're coming from, or being a vegetarian person. I'm talking purely about my family's context.
I was asking you if you love Australia. If you were to stay here and start a family here, what would you take from like Eastern culture and your upbringing there, and what would you want to your kids to adopt about
very
Australian
good question.
culture?
That you know what, I think about that all the time.
You think about that all the time?
I think about that all the time.
Cool. Wow.
And it's not just like what I want to pass on. It's like I always think that I want a deeper understanding, that I should have some advantage that I grew up in the East. Now I've lived in the West for all these years, and I feel like I have been able to get the best of both worlds, and that should give me some edge on combining the two together and potentially live a more fulfilling life. I think about it all the time. There are certainly some things that I want to instill in my kids, for example, or also in myself, right? Because I would want to transform myself into a person first that I can advocate for them to be like. I can't teach them something that I don't have, right?
Right.
There's so many things, like less, obviously a little bit more individualistic than how Indian society is, because I can see how that directly correlates with growth, right? Having a sense of identity and exploring things and discovering things and finding your own answers and making some mistakes and learning. In terms of like what to believe in, which God to follow, which religion, those are some confusing things that I haven't been able to figure out myself yet, so I can't really say anything on that front. But yeah, I think like I would still, general principles is, I don't know, try to be better every day. Try to do more good than harm. Believe in God. Believe that there is something higher out there, because that alleviates a lot of, I feel like, angst, right? And not just believe in it, have some faith in it, and that helps you transform into a better person as well.
What is the difference between belief and faith for you?
Belief could be just mentally, I feel like it's there because my parents said it. Having faith is like, I know, I live such that there is a higher power out there. So have faith that helps you navigate situations. And in terms of like what they want to, like I grew up in a vegetarian household where it was kind of like demonized to eat meat, chicken, beef, anything like that. So my parents were super spiritual. And I don't, like, even after these adult years, I've had meat for a while, stopped, and now I'm trying it again. I have not been able to come up with a very good answer to justify my parents' thinking around being vegetarian. Or people who eat meat are bad, kind of, to some degree. Like, and that is something I'm going to definitely change with my kids. I'm just going to give them both the options. This is what meat tastes like. This is what vegetarian diet tastes like. Make your own decision. Have what you feel like having.
Yeah, that's smart.
And I'm not going to look at you one way or the other if you eat meat or not.
Okay, cool.
And you can make your own decision because I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, I think for me, that comes back to that conversation we had about service level things like sales and dating apps. Like, eating meat it's a decision you have to make based on your values. You shouldn't just do it blindly.
Yeah, my parents had those values put in them by their parents, and they never questioned it. And they put those. I don't know if you know values is like a right word for it, because it doesn't necessarily reflect being better or worse.
Right. That's what I mean. Is like your values should be things like I don't know, doing like the things you named, and then your actions is more like, well, based on these values, should I eat meat or not?
Yeah.
To me, I understand that it's a value for some people.
Yeah, I guess like value can be a bit more like at core, and the actions might change. Because my parents' logic around value or not eating meat would be not taking someone else's life, some living thing's life, to feed yourself when you can have vegetarian food, right? You're killing a living being. But then I've also seen so many vegetarian people who are so cruel to other human beings. You know?
Right.
Like, and I'm always just perplexed that it's the same vegetarian people who've always advocated for some people. I'm a vegetarian too right now, right? So I'm coming from a place that I'm...
But I had meat today.
You had meat today. Well, vegetarian depends on the day, you're vegetarian or not. I always used to wonder, like, I knew some people just in the family, like extended family, who were vegetarians. I'm like, man, they're horrible to other people sometimes. And then I moved here. I had friends who ate meat, and they were some of the kindest people I knew. And I think I drew a safe assumption from that is you eat meat or not has no direct correlation to how nice you are to someone or not. It's an independent thing. Yeah. So I had to change that thought a little bit. So I'm not putting an emphasis of being nice in general on someone being a vegetarian anymore, because who are you nice to, animals or human beings? I feel like human beings should be top priority. You should be nice to human beings, you know? Yeah. And animals after that. But if you don't kill an animal, but you're a terrible person to people around you, then I don't think you really embody the philosophy again. If that's where you're coming from, of being a vegetarian person. I'm talking purely about my family's context there. Yeah. Right? So I've had to think about things again to see what really makes sense. And then I decided that even though I'm confused on this topic and some of my conditioning is going to play a role in terms of how easy it is for me to switch my mind or feel differently, I'm definitely going to let my kids have full liberty around. I'm probably even going to tell them there are 3-4 popular religions, and there's this spiritual world more around Eastern meditation, self-realization. I'm going to let them experience everything and see what they feel most connected towards, and they can follow that. Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's kind of like taking your kids for multiple activities, karate class or wrestling class, whatever, or table tennis, whatever, and then they pick the one they resonate with the most, and then they want to grow in that one. So I think it's funny that I'm getting ideas as I'm talking on this subject.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I feel I'm like probably on every conversation I had, like, people who I talk to are learning things about themselves, and that's just a sign that we all like viewers maybe. I started TikTok where I'm asking you guys some questions, and I think the TikTokers. I don't think they're putting any effort into answering the questions, but it's a good place to start. Ask yourself questions about identity, and let's see where you end up.
Yeah, you discover things So I think I'm just gonna let them try everything and make their own decision. One thing is what I followed. Unless I'm absolutely certain in my understanding of a topic, I'm not gonna impose. That is something I'm very clear on. Yeah, awesome. If there are doubts in my heart or mind about something, I'm not telling them to do that one way or the other. I'll tell them, this is what I know, and this is the information that I have, and this is a piece of information that I don't have. Make your own decision, do your own research, and if you can find an answer that makes more sense, tell me about it. But meanwhile, I can't tell you what to do. This is all I know.
So there are things in your life that you act on and you embrace, but you're not totally sure about them, but you're sure enough about them to embrace them yourself, but not to give them to your children.
Yeah, I'll only give them something that I have not many doubts about. I don't know, don't sleep with your best friend's wife.
That's a good place to start, everyone.
Very random example. I'm very certain that that's a bad idea, no matter how you look at the situation, right? On religion, is Christianity better, or Islam better, or Hinduism better? I don't know. So I'll just let them experience everything.
Yeah. I fucking love that example. I say this as well, but I don't fully agree with it, to be honest, because I think that there are plenty of things that we are almost in agreement about. Yeah. And then there's a lot of things that we argue about, and people focus on the things that we argue about so much, but there are things that everyone could do better, that everyone agrees that they should be doing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm like, but I also see some problems with that maybe I won't get into right now because this is your interview, and maybe it's not even that interesting. But anyway,
we can talk about it, and maybe you'll find something new.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. Well, I just think that like, yeah, you could say that like an example that what does everyone agree on? Like, that like, you know, starving people, it's bad for people to starve. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So okay, easy solution. Like, there's not an easy solution to that. So that's the problem. It's like, yeah, we can agree that it's bad for people to starve, but how do we fix that? It's not so clear. Like, do we just throw money at them? Like, well, that money has to come from somewhere else, and some of those places where that money's going to come from are other things that we all agree on. Like, you know what I mean? The other things that like government money goes to. So you can't just say we have to prioritize, of course.
Yeah. I think like prioritizing people who are starving is a good start.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, sometimes it feels like, I mean, I think we can all agree. Another thing we can all agree on is that sometimes the priorities are wrong. But obviously there's a reason, you know, maybe it's hard to prioritize things and agree on things. So,
yeah, and it's also like, it's hard to prioritize because it depends on what spectrum of comfort you're sitting at. Someone who's super privileged might prioritize world problems, whereas someone who is not even sure if they have enough money in their account to survive the next week might only think about getting more money.
Yeah, and that's a good priority.
And they both will prioritize completely two different things.
Yeah,
you know, and then both of them are not wrong. Yeah. They are right in their own right in that context to chase what they need to chase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if however the problem can occur when the person who is just thinking about the 1 week ahead of them that they need some money to survive, when that person is prioritizing for someone who has everything, or the other way around, the person who's very comfortable is trying to prioritize for someone whose life they're not familiar with, they don't live. That's when the issue is, I think.
Yeah, that's like when, you know, someone who's starving is not going to care about climate change, right?
Absolutely.
And you know, they're both important. Climate change is going to lead to people starving, you know, but down the road, and some of those people can't worry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, going back to something you said earlier, why do you think that people have this really strong feeling in general that religion is not like choosing a sport? Like, choosing a religion is not like choosing table tennis versus running. Like,
that is true, because it's a deeper thing.
Yeah, it's a deeper thing. It's more important.
It is a deeper thing. It's a more important thing. Yeah, they're not wrong. Like, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's as trivial, because it's well, you can change religion like you change sport if it's not sitting with your values. But it's a deeper thing. So it's probably something that you want to reflect on a lot more and make a decision. So I agree. It is something deeper.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, there's no disagreement there.
Yeah, nice.
That question that you asked me earlier about, and it was about how do you feel when someone asks you a potentially insensitive and assuming question like, where you from, where you born here, like potentially insensitive. Do you feel like it's insensitive?
I feel like I'm not really in a place to answer that as a white person.
No, from the outside, like maybe from not your personal experience, but like, do you feel, based on your personal experience, that it's an insensitive question?
I think it comes down to what we're talking about, like, over and over again, is that like, it's not about your actions, it's about your intention.
Yeah.
And so when exactly that, like, I can't make a judgment. I don't think a question can be insensitive. I think it's a person, you know what I mean? And what they mean by it.
Okay, let's say I ask you, like, you know, or you ask me, like, where were you born here?
Yeah.
Is your first impression that, oh, this is insensitive? This is how you feel?
No,
right? Okay.
My personal thing is that I love it when people assume that I'm like, where I'm from. I think it's like, because anywhere that they assume that I'm from, especially outside the US, is like, it's fun.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
it's like, this is interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I get Russia, Poland, all the Scandinavian countries.
Yeah.
Rarely Germany, and sometimes Australia.
Yeah, okay.
And I like all those.
I would imagine you're Aussie, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Like,
cool.
yeah. Like, when I first saw you, like, I would have thought you were Aussie. Like, I don't know. You have
We are in Australia.
Yeah, we are in Australia, but I didn't imagine you to be from US. It's not that I know many people.
Yeah, very rarely, unless people like actually talk to me and hear my accent, do they guess the US.
Yeah.
One time someone was like, "You're from California." A Turkish guy was like, "You're from California, aren't you?" And I was like, and he's like, "I get the vibe," because he was going for the Aussie vibe. You know what I mean? The surfer vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I've got to travel more. I haven't been to US. I want to go at some point. Maybe when I have more time.
Why do you think?
Just because US is projected as like, or at least it used to be. I don't know if that's true anymore. As like the best place to be. For a really long time growing up, at least in India. So that always got me curious and value their country's culture, their values, and get curious about how they've built the world, since they have such a huge global presence and almost dominance in every sector, economy, military, advancements, everything. So that does get everyone thinking, and it draws people in to a large degree. However, lately I feel like, I don't know, it's because if the country has changed or if my perspective has evolved that I can see more than I used to, then I'm like, I'm not really sure now. Or it could be that the life there is fine and the information that you get on the internet is a bit negative. I don't know.
Dude, who can know? It's a huge place too. Like
it's a huge place, yeah.
Yeah, even for me to know, like, how can I know? People ask me about the US and I'm like, what can I say? I'm like, I haven't really lived there that much in the last couple of years. Yeah. I've never been an adult there, and I lived in one place like recently, Seattle, and that's so different from the rest of the US. And then I also have so much influence from media and public connotations and stuff like this.
Yeah, I feel like elections are like, politics is one way to tell the state of the world, state of a nation. Right, and then last US elections does tell you something about the state of the nation without really having to be part of it.
True.
It tells you to some degree, right? That does paint a little bit of a picture, not necessarily something extremely positive. But maybe that's not the right impression. Yeah, maybe still there's much more to the country. Obviously, it would be than what meets the eye, or at least what I can tell as a normal person.
Yeah. And I think, like, as I'm in, people are also talking, like, people in Australia, everyone I met here loves Australia, right? Yeah. Don't people love Australia here?
A lot of people love Australia, absolutely. Depends on who you ask. Now I'm finding there's a small minority of people that do not like it. Okay. Which is usually the people who got a bit put on the sidelines during the whole COVID situation, who chose not to get the vaccine, who weren't let into clubs or pubs or any public places because they didn't have the vaccine. And now if you ask them, like, they have loved Australia, but now they're like, okay, I don't get a great feeling here. Okay. Which is one of my friends. That's how.
Gotcha. Yeah. Is it like he doesn't like the Australian government, or?
He does not like the Australian government anymore.
Right.
Given the path they've chosen towards how they've handled the COVID situations. Strict lockdowns and forcing people to get vaccines, which is again very controversial topic, right?
Yeah. I think there are just a few countries where people like their government, in my head.
Perhaps, yeah, but I didn't see a strong sense of dislike before this COVID situation. It just came after.
Interesting.
Yeah, before that it was like, yeah, but most people do love the place. If you eliminate the government from the equation, yeah, most people do love the place. They love Australia, who live here. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there are so many. I learn all about the public view of America as I travel around.
Yeah, what do you think is the impression?
The further east in Europe, at least, you go, the more people like it. Like, especially in the Middle East, I think they like it, which is weird to say because, like, we did some weird stuff in the Middle East or military. But I didn't meet people from those countries.
Yeah, okay, fair.
I just meet people from, like, let's think. Oh, even those countries. I think Iran and Azerbaijan and Turkey, and these people don't necessarily love the US, but they like the fact that I'm from there. Like, it's cool and exciting, and they also want to go there and start businesses.
Yeah, it's that, you can participate in a free capitalistic society that brings opportunities. I think that's probably why US had such a hold and like a pull towards it, or as if the land of dreams. You could live a life that you want to and make something out of it if you choose to, and if you pursue it and if you work hard for it. That was like what's sold, and then obviously it just resonates with everyone.
Right.
If it's fully true as it was true 20 years ago, I don't know. I can't answer that question. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a very strong thing. The culture, those values have really spoken to a part of human soul. And that is probably the only reason the US got to that level of dominance in the whole world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Because I feel like my personal opinion is that it's not true, really. But I don't know. I don't even know. It's a huge thing. But like,
I'm just talking about an impression. What I'm saying might be inaccurate in reality.
Yeah. And how could I know? It's also my impression. But I like these countries that give like the bottom line enough support, like Denmark, I think, in Scandinavia, but even like New Zealand and maybe Australia. I don't know about Australia.
Oh, there's like a strong social welfare program here. Yeah.
And even though they don't get to keep all the money they make, because of like taxes, I feel like that is to me more the American dream, right? Like the ability for anyone to succeed enough. You know what I mean? But maybe the American dream was more for anybody to succeed exponentially. Which,
I think so.
Okay, that's pretty hard. That's a pretty high standard, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's very unlikely that many people would achieve it. A small percentage would. That's the thing, like, power law, like power, what's a Pareto distribution, right? 80% of resources end up in 20% people's hands. Or I think it's called the power law as well, where, like the tip of the iceberg, the more you get to the top, the smaller the peak is, there's less at the top, but they earn most of it. 1%, 2% people earn more than the bottom 60%. Or even in like sexual dating marketplace, the top 2% people get all the options, and whereas everyone else doesn't.
Right. I guess that's supposed to be for men and not for women.
Yeah, right? For men. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. For men, that is quite true. Yeah. Which kind of reflects what nature is built around, the principles that nature values that are not strongly correlated with human beings' value always. And that's just, I guess, unless you're in a communist country, system's always going to end up when the power gets concentrated in smaller and smaller pockets more and more. And you can like build complex systems like democracy, civilization, values, morals to counteract that to some degree.
Right. Counteract or even take advantage of, or like run with, or something like that.
Yeah, run with. You can run with in a positive sense, but more power does corrupt people. So I don't know if it's possible.
You think it always does?
Yeah. I will know when I have it.
Yeah, nice.
I can't say.
Adi will one day be an evil man.
One day I might be a really evil man, who has lots of power.
Cool. Not today.
Not today. Today will just be a sourceless fact.
A good guy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, all these cultures, how they come up with all these different things. But like largely human nature, I feel, is the same. We all feel the same emotions. To what degree we're aware of them might be different. But human beings mostly are built the same way. They feel the same things, more or less. They want the same things, a better life.
So how does that change how you like see other people and see yourself in relation to other people?
How the outlets might be different. For example, with me in the startup thing, right? Most people are like, they don't necessarily want to go through any a lot of people would love their 9 to 5 and then have a salary, stable life, and I don't fit in that category. So that in that sense is different. But I think most human beings want love, acceptance. That's pretty standard, no matter where you go. Deep inside, they crave that. So how do I feel different? Difference would be my probably over the top pursuit of uncomfortable emotions and growth. That's probably a bit.
Yeah.
In the minority, yeah.
Cool. when you interact with people, do you see them as like, I don't know, like you, like you could have been that or something like this if you were born into their life, or like fundamentally like a unique version of this human experience, human nature?
That's a very interesting question, but like I will answer it in a different lens, right? Like
Sure.
the way I look
Please.
at the world now is a bit like I want to look at the world in the sense that it allows me to understand it the most. At the same time, being able to cast enough judgments that the world has real feedback, accountability, and the bad doesn't prosper more than it should. At the same time, you look for enough good in people that you don't turn them into evil entities in your mind. Does that make sense? You want to see the world in a balance.
So you want to. I didn't. Let's see if I got that.
Yeah.
You want to see the world for what it is to an extent.
To a large extent.
But you also want to give the world the benefit of the doubt so that it can be better than it is. Or
yes, 100%.
as good, or at least as good as
100%.
it is.
And then what my experience has taught me that most people think that they are in the minority, they are better than most people, but they are also just part of the stats.
Yeah.
Like stats are there for a reason. 80% people do fall in that category. Like in certain relationships, people think that they're different. Or like sometimes you go out on dates with girls and they will say something that I've heard so many times before, I can't even count, but they all individually think that their thoughts are different. I'm like, that's so surprising, but I've heard this thing so many times.
You think that girls talk to guys about certain things that they wouldn't talk to girls about, so they never find out that all the other girls agree with them?
Perhaps, yeah. Maybe
we probably do the same thing.
Maybe they talk to. Maybe
like,
they talk.
Let's film us going on a date, like with different people, and then realize, oh fuck, we did the exact same thing. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. much more likely, yeah. And we're like, oh, I'm different, and I'm different. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's possible. I didn't look at it from that perspective as much, but yeah, that can happen. Yeah. But they can probably not get real feedback because men don't necessarily give truth to women as much.
Yeah.
For whatever reason might be. It's the same thing that we were talking about before, giving truth to someone.
Yeah.
Just you should try. Yeah. Give it in a digestible way. So that they have a better more points where they can base their understanding on. So yeah.
Right. Okay, so yeah, okay, going back, I love that perspective about truth plus benefit of the doubt.
Truth plus benefit of the doubt.
That's good. That's
like
good.
you want to I look at the world in terms of the devil and the God, right? In terms of bad and good. Like I want to be able to my personal desire or inclination is I want to be able to fully fathom the darkness in the world. If I do not fully understand it, I cannot relate to it in a constructive way. I don't want to be blinded by anything. I want to understand the full evil that is part of human nature. But once I have made myself fully comfortable to the extent of it, I can strive to be a better person.
Totally.
And I can put people in the box a bit more easily where, okay, this part of them probably needs to be put in a bad person box, and you need the ability to be able to look at someone and also identify they're a bad person. If you fail to do that in this romantic notion of allowing someone to be them irrespective of certain expectations, you can fall in a category where one, you allow the delusion to persist, and then second, you end up harming yourself and people around you because you didn't keep someone else in check. So for me, understanding human nature is so important. The bad, and then hoping and striving to construct the good, but starting from the bad.
Yeah, and it should go for yourself too. Like you were saying about how we mostly think we are better than the others.
Absolutely.
And when you think that, it's so dangerous because you're not going to look for the dangerous traps that other people fall into and think you're going to be different, and you're not going to fall into that same shit.
Absolutely. And one of the best ways of understanding how people can be dark and evil is by looking at the darkness within you, and everyone has it.
Yeah.
The more you can acknowledge that you can be bad at times and fully acknowledge it, it helps to kind of like see the bad in the other person and be like, okay, we're all kind of the same at the end of the day. We're all trying to be better, but sometimes we fall short. A lot of the times we fall short, or we have certain desires.
And when you try to, it's such a hard conversation to have, because as soon as we start like bringing to light all of our evils, we start to criticize each other for normalizing evils. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you're like, no, like we're not trying to normalize it. We're trying to say that this is in us and we have to strive to be better.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
But it's hard, yeah. Like I think that there's,
yeah. To me, like the fear there is like in general, like you don't want to be, you don't want to fail to identify the darkness, and be naive. Because nothing good is going to come out of it. You're going to waste your life, waste years of your life. And you want to be able to identify the true essence of human nature, the good and the bad, to be able to get the best out of situations. That's something I think about a lot.
Yeah. Can you think of an example of something dark that you learned about that helped you?
Oh, it's going to go to like some really controversial things.
Okay, yeah. So maybe not.
Up to you. It's your podcast.
Let's try it. We can cut it out.
Yeah, like something dark that I learned. Oh, there will be many things. It's that people... I have to really put everything into like concise words and try to express it. I think one of the best, maybe the most important things I learned in romantic relationships, that if obviously men can be dark, women can be dark too. I think the whole society portrays women as innocent, as harmless creatures who are always nice, but that's really not true. And I've learned that with my experiences and seeing some people close to me go through terrible experiences again and again, and then that's just been very enlightening. And then the more I struggled to accept it for so long because the idea in my mind was still quite nice. Like, they refuse to acknowledge that they're human beings too. They can be quite evil too, because human beings can be evil in general. That was like a dark thing that I had to like really accept. Okay, human beings can be bad, so it can just women be to a large degree. And it's okay.
Yeah. And I feel like that's not controversial. Like, people are willing to accept that. I think everyone is.
Maybe I started off where I wasn't. I was a bit too naive about it.
Well, I don't know. But I can definitely see falling into the trap of like, meeting a certain girl and you're just thinking like, well, not this one.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful girl,
Yeah.
Inside and out,
Yeah. You would hope to get to that point, hopefully. Yeah.
Like, what I mean is like they are a beautiful person. Like, and you probably are led on by their like external attractiveness, but also the fact that you think that just because they have this certain and it goes for guys too, sometimes you meet a guy and you're like, this is a cool guy, like just first impression, right?
First impressions, you don't want to fall for it.
Right.
Yeah, and perhaps like me saying that, I'm just narrating my experience. I'm not a woman, but I'm sure women experience the same thing. Like, they think that certain guys are nice and they discover they're not.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the opposite is true. I'm not saying this is true, that it means the opposite isn't.
I feel like the male perspective is that girls are really bad judgments of guys.
I think that there's some truth to it, yeah.
But I don't know.
I think that again that depends on, like I heard this, like, it's like guys lie about how successful they are, and women wear a lot of makeup. We both lie about different things that we think the other gender values.
About what we think.
Yeah, so the women think that guys value beauty, which is probably true to some degree. That's why they love to wear a lot of makeup.
Yeah.
To hide or compensate, if they think they're falling short. Or men lie about how successful they are to women because they think women value success and ambition, all that.
Yeah.
They're two opposite ends of the same thing.
Yeah. I think one dangerous thing is that when you assume that like everyone is lying, like then you stop believing like things that seem like lies. Like when someone actually is successful, it's not very attractive sometimes, because you would just think, oh, this person, like, I associate this person with the other people who are lying and maybe just like bad vibes. But like, it's another one of these cases, I think, of like of like overgeneralizing, like sales, dating apps.
You're right.
Like success is bad. Success isn't bad, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Yeah, there's definitely that pitfall. General advice is okay, but you should be able to let go of that the moment you have more information on context.
Yeah.
I think you can go in with the situation, then you'll be okay, following a lot of general advice. But the moment you have more context, more information, let go of the general thing and address the situation the way it is. That's probably the best way to look at it. So you can have both.
Yeah, I wrote an article before I started this podcast about this podcast, and one of the examples was like, you meet someone.
Yeah.
And you say like, oh, so I heard you are X. Like, I think the example was like, I heard you're a refugee. Or maybe like, oh, I heard you're like, you know, from this country. And then they tell you like, oh, actually, you know, blah, 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 long story about how they came to that country. And then they say, oh, so you're a refugee. Mm-hmm. So basically you learned like really what they are, and then you took a step back and like put them in a box unnecessarily. But actually it's okay to put people in a box for a moment, like,
for a moment, yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Like, I heard you're a refugee. But then learn about what does that look like in their life.
Yeah.
And then forget the box.
I think that's a very reasonable way to approach things. Yeah.
It's kind of exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, you come in with some assumptions, and for you to not have any assumptions, you wouldn't know how to relate with anything. Like, we all assume that when we drink a cup of coffee, what the first sip's going to taste like. Right, we all have an expectation that is built from certain experiences. So it's okay to have a box, but maybe that barista didn't make the coffee so well, and you let go of the idea, this cup is not great, you know?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, or maybe they made it differently.
Or maybe they made it differently.
And this one could be good if you open your mind to it.
Yeah, if that's something you can open to it, yeah.
A nice metaphor about coffee and people.
Yeah, metaphorical, yeah. So there's that general assumptions which you want to hold to, but not at the expense of finding out more about a situation, and then you clearly know they're wrong, then you might let go. So
okay, cool. So we've been chatting for a while, and we both have shit to do. So do you have any final remarks?
I've loved the conversation, to be honest. Yeah, so that's my remarks, and it felt very natural. I just enjoyed having this conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm so happy that we did it. I was stoked when you were so down. I'll just say, I think just a little note, because people always ask me, how do you meet people when you go abroad? And this is like important step where like you want to stop listening to the podcast and you want to start like having these conversations yourselves. So like I'll say like we have mutual friends and we go to a co-working space together. That's how I met someone in another country.
Yeah. We just had a random small chat, and somehow this podcasting came up, and I was like, I would be keen, and here we are.
Cool, man.
Cool.
So that's us logging off. This is the Post Definitions podcast. Like, subscribe. We're on Spotify, YouTube. Repost it on social media.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.